Pastor Jeremy Donovan?
So I was actually born in Ohio, but I grew up in Philadelphia. I was a pastor's kid, so my dad took a church in Philadelphia when I was a kid. Man, it's so hard to be a pastor's kid sometimes. And I got really angry at the church, and a lot of anger started coming in my life. And about 13 years old, I started experimenting with drugs and that sort of thing. I think by about 16 is when you could say I was a full-fledged addict. And then I had left the church, left my home by 18. I moved out and just kind of went on my own, lived on people's couches, lived in Love Park for a while, you know, that kind of stuff. And everything that came with drugs came with my life. So by 19, I was a teen father. And my life was just falling apart. At right around 20 years old, I was walking in the mall and I passed out. I woke up and I had vomit all over me and everything, and the security guards were around me. Well, I had a bunch of drugs on me, so I was like, I'm out. And I left. I went to my car and I passed out again in my car. And then I woke up again with more vomit on me, and I was like, okay, I should probably go to the hospital. The doctor, I don't think I've ever seen a doctor scared before, but he was scared and he was shocked. He was like, and he looked at me and he said, I don't know why I'm talking to you. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you have what they call a brain aneurysm, and your brain exploded. He said, and 1 in 3 people live from an aneurysm, but when they explode, you don't live. You die instantly. And he said, for some reason, I'm still talking to you, and your brain is bleeding and killing you right now. So they had to rush me into surgery, obviously. So I went into brain surgery. It was one of the first cities in the nation that did an angiogram. So that's why I don't have anything on my scar on my beautiful head. It's still beautiful. But when I was going into that surgery, I remember praying, like, God, if you let me live through this, I'm gonna live for you for the rest of my life. But all that said, I lived, I made it through, went through about 6 months recovery, got out of the hospital, and went right back into my addiction. At that point, I had always seen God as this dictator, this, like, if you do wrong, you're in trouble, you know? And it's nothing my parents taught me. I mean, it's just how I just perceived it. No matter what was taught to me, you know, you just perceive things, and that's how I saw God. And so I went crazy. I thought God was gonna kill me because I broke my promise to him. And then about a year after my aneurysm, I just got so fed up with thinking God was trying to kill me every day that I just tried to kill myself. And that moment was the first moment I ever heard God really speak to me. And he said, what are you doing? He talked to me like a dad, you know? He said, what are you doing? And I was like, man, I keep breaking my promise. Like, I try to be a Christian, and I'm not a good Christian. I'm a really good drug addict. I'm not a good Christian. And it's just frustrating. And I just heard him say, it's not about the promises you make to me. It's about the promise I made to you. And I sent my son Jesus to die for you, and he loves you. And I just accepted that day. So I called the police. They knew where I lived. I said, tried to kill myself, and they came, and thank goodness they pumped my stomach. If I had never tried it, like, that's the worst experience ever, is getting your stomach pumped. And they put me back in a mental institution. This time they put me in the Philadelphia prison system in the mental ward. And I spent a few months in there just praying. And then there was a pastor, his name was Dave, that would come visit me. But I just fell in love with Jesus there. After that, they let me out and went to rehab in Florida. Long story short, went to Florida, went to rehab for 90 days, and then a Bible college accepted me. I just knew I wanted to do something for Jesus. So I became a Bible college student and moved my way into ministry. I'm not one to say, like, I hear the audible voice of God on a daily basis. I really don't. I did in that moment. I really feel like I heard the Lord. But he really speaks to me in my heart. When you have Jesus with you, you can I just know when it's a God spoken thing that comes to my heart and not me. It's like stuff comes to my mind, but then my heart, you know, does that make sense? So he speaks to me, but he also speaks to me through people I trust. He speaks to me through them and through his word. That's the biggest thing I would say is, if you don't feel like you can hear Jesus, the Bible is God's voice. So turn there and he'll speak to you for sure. For me, it was interesting. My life definitely did change. I always knew the Bible. I just didn't know God as somebody who actually loved me. So it was like he finally believed in me. So I viewed the world as somewhere that I could really make a difference. For some reason I see pain, maybe because I've been through a lot. And so I saw a world that was in pain the way I was, that I could possibly help with the good news. Because it's more than just a belief. It's like, there's good news. You can live a better life, you know? And so it changed the world into a beautiful place for me instead of a mean, angry place for me. You know, when I first started in this, I thought it was to change the world. That's the reason I wrote a book. I used to host different television shows and different things like that. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, but I do it now again today, but that's not the reason for it. I don't need to be world famous or have the largest church or anything like that. I think John chapter 17 for me, Jesus' final prayer, it's very interesting to me, but in the last few verses, verse 25 and 26, he says, he lists his accomplishments in 2 verses. Jesus lists his accomplishments in 2 verses. But he says, the world may not know you, but they know you, and they know that you've sent me. And they'll continue to make you known. And I began to weep because I think I was moving towards trying to be so popular in ministry that I was missing the people in ministry. And so I stopped a lot of the stuff I was doing for a while and just really concentrated on people. So I pray that the people that are in my life, this is what I want my legacy to be. When I leave, that they say, I know Jesus because of him. He represented Jesus well. And what I mean by that is most importantly is like my kids. I don't want to be that pastor that's one thing at church and then goes home as a whole other thing. I just want to be me. And so I want my kids to know Jesus when I go. I want the people in my church to say we knew Jesus because of him, and that's what I want my legacy to be, so that they'll continue to make him known.